Hey, it's Rob Minton, and welcome back to another Cash Flow Narrative video. In these videos, I try to share different strategies you can use to increase your income, pay off your debt, so that you can live in this position of financial strength where you never have to worry about money again. You don't have to worry about losing your job. You don't have to worry about a market crash. You have financial peace. That's the goal, financial peace. And in this particular video, I want to talk about costly mistakes that I have made investing in real estate. And I've been investing in real estate for over 30 years. I've made numerous mistakes. Every mistake is a learning opportunity. And in this video, I want to share these mistakes so that you can learn and you can avoid making the same mistake yourself. Now, when we buy real estate or when we invest in real estate, our goal is pretty simple. We want to buy assets and we want to avoid liabilities, right? And you're like, Rob, that is not earth-shaking news. Well, here's what happens. You buy a property that you think is an asset and it turns into a liability. This is what we want to avoid: secret liabilities or hidden liabilities. Now, to find hidden liabilities, there are two things to pay attention to. The first one is that we want to look at the future expenses of the property. We want to avoid situations where you have to put a lot of money into the property and you're not able to get that money back out. It doesn't improve the value of the property. It does not increase the rental income of the property. It really is an expense. The money goes out with no return. Now, the second issue, the second thing that happens that turns a property into a liability is a situation that creates a large negative cash flow. Actually, let me just clarify that. A negative cash flow. So what happens is you own a property and then all of a sudden you have to put more money into the property every single month. And that's because the expenses are higher than the income. And that happens typically when you have to reduce your rental rate or you have a vacancy. So these are the two issues that turn a property from an asset into a liability. And to highlight these issues, I'll share a few stories from my various investments. When I first started to invest in real estate, I was working in the corporate world. I started to buy a couple properties on my own, and I was talking to one of my buddies. We went to college together. He was also in accounting. He was at a different company, and he got really excited and wanted to invest in real estate too. So we partnered up, we formed an LLC, and we went out looking for properties. The very first property that we purchased was a foreclosure, and the bank that foreclosed on the property was offering this amazing financing. They were allowing you to buy the property with zero down. They were okay with an investor. It was very easy to qualify for. And the reason why this was the situation was because the property had a slight structural issue. So my partner and I wanted to build our portfolio. We were in greed mode. We purchased this property. We rented it. Things were going fine, right? Everything was okay. Well, the problem with slight structural defects is that they become major structural defects. So as time passed, this issue grew, which meant the liability grew. And we eventually got to the point where we had to invest, I think it was around $20,000 to fix this issue. The issue was that on one side of the home, the structural support, the foundation of the home was sinking. So we ended up having to bring a structural engineer in. They had to jack up the house. They had to resupport the house. The city was involved. It was very costly in terms of the amount we had to put into the property, all of the hassles we had to deal with. And the hard part about that is that we put $20,000 into the property, and that additional investment into the property generated zero return. Like, you can't run an ad saying, beautiful home, structural renovations just completed. Like, no one's going to pay any extra rent because of a structural improvement, right? Or you can't sell a home for more money because of your structural repair. So that's a liability. Money in, no return. The second situation that this partner and I incurred, where we bought an asset and it ended up kind of becoming a liability, was that we purchased a commercial property, and this property had several commercial spaces on the first floor and then had 2 or 3 apartments on the second floor. When we purchased the property, there was a space, a commercial space that was vacant, and we would rent it to a small business owner. Usually it was someone who wanted to start a business. They didn't really understand business, so within a few months they would be back out, or we would have to get them out or threaten you. It was always a challenge, right? So we finally got fed up and we decided to renovate the space and turn it into an office. And our goal was then to attract an established business who needed office space. We wanted kind of a stable and secure commercial tenant. So we didn't really know much about all of this. We started the renovation process, and the city got involved, as they usually do. And it became very apparent very quickly, because they let us know that when you make changes to a commercial property, these special rules kick in where you have to make the space ADA compliant. This was all new to us. This was a long time ago, but that meant that we had to redo the bathroom. We had to expand the bathroom, which changed the whole layout. We had to do special fixtures. Please understand, I'm not saying that I was frustrated having to make it ADA compliant. What was frustrating was that we had to end up spending a lot more money that we did not expect because of our inexperience experience, and there's really not a significant return on investment, right? You can't charge more rent because of that situation. You can't sell the property for more money. So this is another example of money going into a property with zero return. So this is what you really want to look out for. If you're looking at a property, look, are there large future expenses with zero return? And if so, be very careful with that property. I'll give you a third example. A different group of partners and I purchased a large apartment complex, and this property had lots and lots of trees. So as you can imagine, at some point in time, we ended up having to cut down many trees, and I can't remember the exact number, but it was like 15 trees, and it was very, very expensive. And I hate cutting down trees for numerous reasons. One is I love trees; they're awesome. Number two, it's very expensive, and number three, zero return on investment. Right? You can't take trees out and then advertise, great rental property, no trees. Like no one cares. A few other things to think about: properties with damp basements, very expensive to waterproof a home or a property, zero return on investment. So you want to watch out for any of these scenarios where you have a future large expense that you cannot charge more rent for. Now let's move on to the second liability, and that's a situation where you have negative cash flow in the property. The primary way to eliminate this potential mistake is to only buy properties that are always in demand from prospective tenants. So for me, commercial space, way too risky because the demand, very hard to rent a commercial space when it goes vacant. So I just stay away from it. The best properties for me are lower price starter type homes. And the reason why is that they are always in demand, right? They're in demand in good market cycles. They're in demand in bad market cycles. In essence, you want to buy a property that when it becomes vacant, very easy for you to rent. Like there's nothing that's going to prevent you from renting that property, because if you're not able to rent it, you now have negative cash flow. So think through who your prospective tenant is, and is there a massive demand at all times? If so, that's very, very helpful. The second thing to really think about is the layout of the property. Is the layout of the property funky? Like, will it be hard for you to rent the property because of how it's laid out? Another thing, size. Is it too small? I've had several issues throughout my journey with properties that were too small. Very difficult to rent. Turnover is significantly higher. More headaches, more expense, less profit. So I'm very careful with funky layouts. I'm very careful with small size, and I'm very careful with location. So that's the last thing to really think about in terms of negative cash flow. You might have a great property, but if it's located in an area where people aren't really interested in living, you probably have a liability on your hands, because it'll be very hard for you to rent that. So you kind of want a cookie cutter home in an area with a ton of demand, without large trees, without structural problems. You really want to think through the future of that property and how difficult will it be for you to rent, to own, to manage, to maintain. These are things that I didn't know when I first started investing in real estate. I was looking at the numbers of the property, current numbers of the property, and I was not really mentally thinking through the next 3, 5, 10, 15 years. And that's really what you need to do, because if you're going to invest in real estate, the only guaranteed way to make money is to hold it for the long term, right? You want to buy a property where the longer you own it, the more money you make. So that means then you have to think through what will happen in the future. You have to try to estimate or gauge problems that will happen. This is something I did not know when I first started to invest in real estate. So I hope this is helpful for you. Avoid liabilities, buy assets. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.